Well, it's an absolute joy to be joined by Jay Pathak here, who's the pastor of a family of churches, of neighbourhood churches in Denver. And you've been to KXC a few times, spoken at our weekend away, which was an unbelievable gift. So huge welcome to you, Jay. We've basically been asking friends and family, people that we've been learning from over years and tracking with, the same two questions. Question number one, launching really from Matthew 16, where Jesus says to the Pharisees, look, you can look at the sky and you can forecast the weather. Why can't you read the signs of the times? So we've been asking our friends to give their best attempt at articulating what do you think the Spirit of God is doing right now in the church, in the culture. And second question, a bit more personal, is what are you learning in this moment of lockdown, quarantine, this crazy time? What is God teaching you? So let's start with the first question then, Jay. What do you see God doing right now, and how can we jump on board what God's up to?
Yeah, to what you're saying, I every single day I'm praying for the church, for our city, for the world. I have the same thought has come to mind every single morning in this pandemic, and it's a quote I've heard attributed to a lot of different people, so it's like most quotes. I'm not sure who actually said it. So whenever I've lost track of who said it, I just decide it's mine. It's become my quote. I've heard multiple people say that, the church in the West specifically has become a bad chess player. And what bad chess players do is they use their queen too much. And they move their queen all over the board to try to control the board. Great chess players sparingly use their queen, and usually they win the game with their queen and their rook after they've aligned everything else.
Wow.
And what seems to me to be happening specifically to the church in the West is we've lost our queen, so to speak. We've relied really heavily on our Sunday experiences, and maybe even a series of other little programs that have helped us sort of get certain kinds of things done, that sort of made an end round around just some simple, clear discipleship.
Yeah.
And the best way you teach a person to play chess is you take their queen off the board. And then at some point, you put the queen back on. When they position the board the right way, and you say, look how easy it is to win now with the queen. And so one thing this pandemic has done is made it so that we can't rely on a lot of the things we've relied on, and specifically Sunday gatherings and some of our processes and programs. And what I'm encouraged by, and then other days really discouraged by, is how we have lost so much of our ability to just be disciples and make disciples and learn how to depend on the movement and the presence of the Holy Spirit in our own lives. And in small and simple gatherings. And how many are flailing because we can't do the thing we've always done. And my prayer is, much like the way that you teach a chess player, the Lord is teaching the church by taking away some of those things. So that when we do get the opportunity to gather again, when we do get to run the things we've always run, which I love. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about any of those things. The queen is a powerful piece on the board, But when we do get to gather, we will have learned something that enables us to engage culture, to be the people of God differently. And so I've been praying that every day, that we learn in this time. We've been doing a little sermon series called Finding Faith in the Wilderness. And God's main method of shaping his people is to strip them and to make them vulnerable and dependent on him. So I think that's clearly what's happening to the church. And some people are flailing. Some people are creatively adapting. Other people are just hunkering down and waiting for it all to pass over, I don't know, eventually this will be done. Let's just tread water until we can do what we used to do. And I'm really encouraged by the churches that are saying, no, we're not just going to tread water. We're going to take a hard look at who we are and what we're doing and how we live. And more than that, notice the anxieties and the pressures and the weak spots that are being revealed within us. Weak spots in our marriages.
Yeah.
Weak spots in our budgets. It turns out all that stuff we've learned about for years. Like you should have some margin in your budget. You might need a Sabbath to create space to rest in the Lord. It turns out those things are true. So, when the pressure comes, you actually have something to fall back into, rely on, that you've learned how to be dependent on the Lord when things are going well.
Yeah.
So that you can depend on when things are not going well. So my prayer and hope is we don't waste this moment.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I wanted to become a crisis agency at first. My first few moves were, the church just rushed into the problems that when the pandemics hit, they were the first people, the front lines that reached out. They were willing to die. Let's all do what we got to do. We're going to demonstrate Jesus to the world. And there was a really clear awareness for me with our church and about every church I know that we're not who we thought we were.
Yeah.
We're not as thick inside
as
we thought we were. So that feels, I hope that doesn't feel too corrective. I think it's an invitation.
Yeah. I think that's entirely right. I think we felt that at KXC. I think many of us individually have felt that, this stripping back. And that, without the Queen, I think we are being invited into a really critical moment of spiritual formation. We are in a wilderness. We all feel that. We are being formed. Just talk us through then, because for a lot of us, the manifestation of this at first is panic. Oh my gosh, I can't survive. I'm a horrible husband. I'm a bad dad. I'm selfish. I don't have enough patience. You just become aware of the brokenness and the insecurity.
Yes.
As that begins to rise, I know you've done a lot of thinking about this, and now you're coaching pastors, business communities in essentially discipleship and spiritual formation. What do you do when you hit that moment of crisis?
Well, what I'm about to say isn't very pleasant.
Break it to me. Hit me with it.
Yeah. Well, when you say, what do? I think what you're trying to ask me is, what should I do? Yeah. And what I would say is the first thing you should notice is, what do you actually do? So what I just confessed was my moves are to get active. So the way that I manage my anxieties and my awareness of my brokenness is by doing as much as I can so I don't feel bad. That might not be true for everyone. Other people curl up in a ball and want to die. Other people self-soothe in ways that are really unhelpful. You can see all the pornography and the alcohol and all the things that are happening right now culturally too. And of course, none of those are helpful.
Yeah.
I've had horrible realizations, Pete, through my last 15 years that I've had to wonder at different points, am I in ministry simply so as a means of managing like my own pain and dysfunction?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the ways I did ministry was because I thought if I could help other people, somehow I'd feel better about myself.
Yeah.
And obviously, as I say that, I hope you realize, and I hope anyone would realize, that's not going to work. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Works a little bit. That's why we do it. Getting a little drunk helps when you're really sad. But it's short-lived.
Yeah.
And it increases the consequences. They compound. And so I guess what I would want to say is, first, pay attention. Notice the movements of your own soul. Do not be afraid of sadness and grief, because it's as we become aware that we experience some pain and some sadness, that's the fuel for transformation.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, externalize that by including some other people, and specifically including God. Just put these things in front of God. Say, God, I think I'm realizing I am, I'm not a good husband. and I've used my money to mostly take care of myself. Or, I think technically I was giving maybe even 10%, but I took the rest and pushed it to the edge where I'm in debt. And I don't know what I've done. Why do I live like this, Lord? Who am I? Why am I like this? God, I've realized I love my kids, but I don't like my kids very much. And there's parts of whatever stage they're in that I don't know how to manage, and it brings up my own stuff, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And when you put these things before God, and hopefully a few trusted friends, what you're really pressing, what you're testing is, do I believe the gospel?
Yeah.
The gospel says there's nothing I can do that will make me more loved. So I can't make him love me more. And there's nothing that I can do that will make him love me less. So, in other words, when we put these things in front of God, it's not like God's going, wow, this is some new information.
Oh, this is worse than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. This changes things. Okay? So I'm not, now we're gonna have to reconfigure the nature of this relationship. Now that you bring this to my attention, it's as though the Lord, like a good parent, says, oh, son, I've known this a long time. Oh, daughter, I know. I'm so glad you're seeing this. Let's have a talk. And I think that the sort of move of a lot of pastors or friends is to say, oh, it's not that bad, or you're doing great, or, just think about how screwed up everybody else is. You're not like them, so that's cool. But that isn't the voice of the Lord almost ever for me. The Lord comes and says, oh, son, I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
And this is really, here's what's interesting, Jay. It's so much worse than you know. I'm really glad we're having this conversation. But it's much worse than this. But I love you more than you can imagine. Yeah. It's okay. We're gonna figure this out, and it's the grace of God to start to notice these movements and these patterns. It is grace. It's grace. It's love, and we encounter the gospel afresh. That's what I believe.
I mean, I feel so moved hearing it again, because it's those moments when you realize the voice of the Father is just so tender and so beautiful. And even those of us that have followed Jesus for years, when you're reminded that this is a story and a relationship marked out by grace, it's just so beautiful. So, you've mentioned this kind of like the realization of that moment of like, oh, this is who I am. I know you've done a lot of thinking about, okay, this is how I became who I am. So a lot of people in lockdown, they've realized, oh gosh, this is who I am. And maybe some are beginning to ask the question, how did I get here? And I know you've done a chunk of thinking around family of origin stuff.
Yeah.
Just talk us through, why understanding that stuff actually helps us bring our full selves into the grace of God.
Yeah, I would just say the unique ways in which we can be broken are pretty much limitless, right? So when we say that God has rescued us from sin, when we say that we believe that God is making us a new creation, those things are entirely true. So we are new creations in Christ. But it only takes about 10 seconds of living a new life with God to realize that you're still carrying around whoever you were with you.
Yeah.
It's not some kind of magic trick where all of a sudden, like, boom, I'm like a whole different person. Like I think differently. That's not true. And so it does take some analysis, which would be the kind of theological idea would be sanctification, which is I am saved, but how am I becoming more like Jesus? And the unique ways in which I have been corrupted and broken, and the ways that I've interacted with that are sophisticated, and frankly, they're difficult to notice because they're the only things I know to do.
Yeah.
So they're subtle. So for me, like in this pandemic, just to talk very directly about now, I'm teaching to cameras, okay, like all the time. And I don't like it. Like just straight up, I don't like it. So So the ways that I've described not liking it is, I don't get to feel the reaction, the response of people, and that's hard for me. And that's how I like teaching, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But a little deeper analysis tells me I need the feedback to feel like I'm valuable. When I don't get to hear the room laugh, I don't get to have that moment of ministry. There's something true and good about me wanting to see God move in people's lives firsthand. That's great. There's also something a little weird there where I'm needing it in order to feel like what I do is valuable and interesting.
Yeah.
When the truth is, and what pastors all say is, I just preach for an audience of one. I lead worship for an audience of one. It's really just the Lord, and you're just here watching. And well, it turns out that's not entirely true for me, Pete. And okay, I can let that take hold of me and create shame, or I start asking, what's going on here? And the truth is, I was raised in a family that was very performance-oriented. Now, whether it was true or not, or whether it was intended or not, it doesn't matter. What I interpreted was if I did good, I was loved well. I was loved. And if I didn't, I wasn't. And the only way I got attention in my little family system was by performing, because everybody was too distracted otherwise. And so, having to grapple with, I formed some ways of understanding who I am in relationship to what I could do. And I took some of that stuff and I stuck it right into ministry as I became a believer. And God's so gracious. He just went, okay, we can work with that. I can work with that. We'll help you. But somewhere along the line, he loves me too much. And he says, hey, son, we're going to have to talk about this.
Yeah.
And if you really want to know me, we're going to have to do this differently for your sake and for what I want to do in and with you. So that takes some analysis to notice even good ways that I'm showing up in the world and impressing people and doing something interesting actually has sort of an underbelly to it that God intends to deal with. And that's true about everything. I mean, there's nobody that wakes up one day and says, I have a 5-point plan. If I drink enough regularly, I bet I can ruin my life within 1 year. I can do it. If I stick with the plan, I will dismantle my entire life, or I can destroy my marriage. If I just keep interacting like this, every time something happens, I'm just going to be spiteful and I can destroy my marriage. It's going to take 6 months. I'm going to stick to the plan. But we do that, and it's because we're operating on some other operating system that's running in the background. Like a good computer, you don't even know the operating system's running. But it's running. And what we don't realize is how that's glitching and creating negative impact in our life. And we've even spiritualized it a lot of times. And that takes some analysis. It takes some time to separate those things, and hopefully some good coaching and the leading of the Holy Spirit. But you can get that work done in the wilderness in a way you can't in the middle of your normal life.
And I think that's probably what's happening for many of us, is actually God pointing his finger on some areas, and his grace is beginning to redeem the operating system. And my hope and prayer is that we could come out of this wilderness, like Jesus in Luke 4, empowered by the Spirit.
Amen.
You're ready to engage in ministry in a whole new way. Well, one other question, Jay, you're an evangelist, you're a natural evangelist. We've heard at KXC when you came and did our weekend away, you sharing stories of you just doing some nuts things, sharing your faith. This is a moment of phenomenal spiritual hunger. Some of the stats in the UK right now, 24% of the population have attended an online service in lockdown. In the sort of 18 to 30 demographic, it's 34%. This is crazy when you think of the UK, often known as a place where the church is dying, hemorrhaging. So there's an incredible moment of spiritual hunger. What are you doing to try and actually proclaim your faith to those that are spiritually searching at this time?
Yeah, first and foremost, and I'd agree, all the observations are my experience. So first and foremost, I'm just trying to maintain connection and contact with those that I know don't have any faith. it's really important that all of us who have coworkers, friends, neighbors, family members, just maintain contact. What I'm really aware of, Pete, is how many people that don't have any faith, they never had a close enough connection. They don't have close enough connections with people they worked with or went to the gym with, or, I mean, I played golf with. So they have friends, but nobody that they'd be like, hey, we should get on a Zoom. I mean, it just would feel too like an overreach, you know, like. And so when I reach to them and say, hey, man, I've not talked to you in a while. I just love to check in. This is somebody maybe I play golf with. They're like, really? I'd love to do that. But their security or their courage to do that on their own is really low. So I'm shocked at how many folks I'm connecting with that literally aren't connecting with anyone else. Now that's bizarre for me because I'm living on this stupid thing called Zoom. Like, I mean, I feel I just want to like throw my computer out the window most days. But I project that onto others. And I'm thinking, well, that's where everybody's at. It's not. The loneliness that we knew was there before this is only being accentuated now. And so when I'm reaching to folks that I had just sort of tertiary relationships with from the gym, on the golf course, they're like, I'd love to talk. And the level of depth that we're getting to, I don't know what it is. Is it because we have a little more distance? They can be a little more brave. You know, we're on the screen. Is it that they're desperate? Is it I'm more intentional because I'm in a moment that's focused? You know, I'm not playing golf or doing something else. I don't know. Some combination of all that stuff. Or is it something God's doing? Is creating super intentional moments with people. So I would say first and foremost, before we figure out whatever else, just remain connected. Make moments to be with people. And then obviously God's doing incredible things through things like Alpha, the Sunday experiences online, like you said. I mean, it feels like the hurdle, the barrier's been lowered so much.
Yeah.
That like people don't have to wonder, am I going to wear the right thing? Are they going to do something to me if I show up? They're just like, I don't know. If I don't like it, I'll just turn it off. You know, they won't even know I was there. So there's something good about that where people are
it's coming to church in your pajamas, isn't it?
Totally.
We're all living
which is helping church people too, I think. You're right. So I've just asked people to do really simple things, which is just invite people on your Facebook feed. Invite people when you're talking to them. Hey, check this out. And then even create follow-up environments.
Yeah.
Hey, after you get a chance to listen to this, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah,
let's talk about it. So and you've probably heard this from me before, Pete. My basic leaning is to empower people to do the connecting work, less than create the programs that we're doing it for them. So relational connections, quick conversations, ask good questions, and specifically anyone that has any generalized anxiety of any kind or has had depression, this is the right time to make connections because I don't know about you guys and what you're seeing in the UK, but here, I'd say in the last 10 days, something has tipped. So I have 5 different folks that are one click. So a friend of a friend who've committed suicide in the last 10 days. People who have attempted suicide. People are having different mental breakdowns. Something's tipped in the last 7 to 10 days. It's like we hit a threshold and those who were barely holding on are really having a hard time doing that, which means we got to reach to them. It's just a connection. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And then connect them to the help that they need. So anyway, those are the basic things I'm doing and seeing a lot of growth.
It's brilliant. Final question then, Jay, which is just personally, what are you learning? What's God doing in your own life?
Well, I'm learning that I love my family. I really do. And I'm super grateful for, my wife worked really hard with our family to create like a quite literal Sabbath for our family before all this. And I just have to admit, by way of confession, resistance is not the right word. I knew this was right. I just kind of was disobedient. That's probably the better word. Like we would have the day and I would just be like, I got to get this couple emails done. Like, whatever. We're on Sabbath, but I got to get this done. Or, whatever. Stuff like that. I got to do this one phone call. That's all I'm going to do. And every time you do that, when you've set aside time to rest and trust the Lord and be connected, what you're really saying is, God, I know you're in control, but I kind of need to do some things. And, you're not all the way in control, I mean, I know you think you are, but you kind of still need me to do something. So anyway, in this time, we've been a lot more intentional. And because we had that rhythm before this, it's really taken root in this time.
Wow.
And it's secured us in a way that I'm confident. I'm praying and believing it'll endure through our life. And, we make pasta together. We have all these little rituals we built. And I'm super, super grateful. So that would be positive. I mean, negative is what I said earlier. I'm aware of all kinds of different ways that I'm validated by my life that are not from God.
Yeah.
Or for God even, honestly. Or for myself. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that I can learn to trust and rely on the Lord differently.
Amazing.
In this time. So that when we go back to what we're doing, it's like I can operate differently. That's what I'm praying for.
That's stunning. Love that.
Yeah.
Mate, I can see all these books behind you. I know a lot of our guys will be thinking, gosh, look at all those biblical commentaries. They're actually racy novels that you've been enjoying. I just thought I'd share that with those watching.
It's worse than that. They're just like cardboard fronts. They aren't even books. It's like you can buy a pack. It's like a picture. You just glue it on to a box. That's really all it is. So.
It's just good for our people to know that. Anyway, Jay, thank you so much for your time. What a gift that's been. God bless.
Of course. Bless you.